Hey there, it says I'm live. We'll see. You guys be the judge of that. Let me know if I am live, if the audio and the video is okay. Let me know how things are going. My face looks funny. I trimmed my beard a little bit while I was in Lubbock, and it's gray down here, and it's like there's like a line. Weird. I have no idea. The mustache is kind of dark. I don't know. Anyways, welcome to the show. My name is Michael Bunker. This is the Bunker Nation Show. Glad you could be here. I'm going to be your host for the evening. I hope a lot of people are going to come in and talk and hang out and chat, and everybody else just push into the room, get into the comment section, and just type in, tell me where you are. Let me know, hit the like button, etc. We got some things we're going to talk about, but we'll give it a few minutes. Make sure people show up. Frank says I'm here, and he's hearing and seeing me real good. All right. Well, we're going to go ahead and do the box. Then after we do the box, we'll come back and talk just a little bit. Hopefully this sounds better than the last show. I am back home. Just got back in a couple hours ago. Left Friday and went to Lubbock where my parents live. Met there with my daughter and her husband and my grandson James, and we all had a good weekend. Just sitting around enjoying each other and that sort of thing. So we had fun. Just got back a little while ago. We got the animals fed. We got some chores done, catching up on some emails and whatnot. And then I sat down to do this show. I put a thing on Facebook and I said, what do people want for the next show? And I almost got no responses. I think I got 4 or 5. And the choices were, number one, time travel. And I didn't specify what I meant by that. I think I don't even remember. I think the second one was who's going to die if things go the way they're looking they're going to go with the Civil War that some folks got planned. The third one I was talking about was classic literature for 1,000, Alex. And then I don't even remember what the fourth one was. Let me go look. I'm going to go look on Facebook. In the meantime, if somebody knows, you can type it in the comment section. Come into the comment section and just make a comment. Let me know you're out there. All right. So what did I say the fourth thing was that I could talk about? Let me see. I posted a lot. I've posted too much. The fourth thing was reading literature. The third was Q&A for fitness, and nobody was interested in that at all. So it was 1, time travel, 2, who will die in the war, and 4, reading literature. Hello, Pat. Glad you could be here. Everybody come in and type in the comment section if you can. If you're on YouTube, hit the like button, subscribe, etc. So I thought what I'd do is I'd kind of combine the 3 that people actually selected. And we talk about those 3 things. Unless you have questions or comments. If there's anything you want to talk about, I'll be glad to talk about that. I got a little bit of allergies going on, not too bad. There's been a lot of smoke in the air. There was a lot more in Lubbock than there is down here. It was a little clear a little while ago. Starting to get a little darker, but had a lot of smoke in the air in Lubbock, and that may have had something to do with my allergies flaring up. Hello, Hannah. You guys come on in, say hi. So we can talk about the Supreme Court deal we talked about on the last show. We can talk about Civil War II. We could talk about whatever you guys want to talk about. Just type into the comment section any questions or comments or topics. But in the meantime, time travel. Why am I talking about time travel? Well, I think it's important for a lot of things, but primarily in the way to read books, which leads to our commentary on literature, American literature. And why do you need to read American literature or Russian literature or English literature in general? Because that's how you know stuff. People contact me all the time and they're like, how do you know things? How do you know what's going to happen? How can you be right so much, Michael Bunker? How can you be right 99.6% of the time? Because I read books and they hide stuff like that in books. It's curious the way they do that. But you read books about the Russian Revolution, you can see the fingerprints of what's going on today. You read books and articles and stories about the Cambodian genocide, about Rwanda, about the Cuban Revolution, about the French Revolution. You know stuff, and when all of that stuff gets piled in, it's kind of like the Goodwill Hunting. You get it all in your brain, and then all of a sudden you see stuff, and you're like, I can recognize. It's pattern recognition. We talked about that before. So how does time travel and American literature or literature in general tie together? Y'all get in here close. Reading history books, even if it's fiction literature, is time travel. It really is. But it depends on how good you are at it. Most people can't do it. Some people can. Most of you who have read my books, especially my time travel books, like my time travel short stories. I'm going to get to War and Peace here in just a minute. Have a thank you and welcome. So if you read my time travel books, there's a particular type of time travel. Let me go through that first. We're going to talk about time travel, and then we're going to talk about why it's important to where we are today and what's going on, and literature in general. There are a couple of different ways that time travel mechanisms happen in books. There has to be a mechanism of time travel in a time travel book. That mechanism could be as simple as falling asleep and waking up in 1812. That type, hello, Houston Metro. PJ, glad to see you. That type of time travel, which is merely kind of mystical time travel, where you just wish you were back in 1948, 1648, whatever it is. And then for some reason that's unexplained, you just go there. Sometimes there's a genie involved or some magic or something like that. Another type of time travel is mechanical time travel, which is somebody figured out the science. Yes, you're right. This is why Brave New World and those other old history books, 1984, will have to be banned and replaced. Mechanical time travel is somebody invents a machine or figures out the science. They figure out that if you have a certain thing or you hold a certain object or you build a scientific gizmo or you have a special watch, that you can time travel because it's science. Don't get ahead of me. Of course, a portal. That's the other way. That's kind of the mystical way as well. And I've used all of these types in my stories. I use a portal in one of the short stories that's in my Time in the Gloaming, which is the Jessup stories. I think I have 3 Jessup, Texas stories, and they use at least 2 types of time travel. One of them is the portal. And the portal is basically some weird rip in time space or some window in time. And you step through it if you happen to be in the right place. And sometimes you might have to, it may have to be a specific moment in time. Then you can go to another time, or maybe to that place in another time. So that's another way to time travel. The way that I use the most in almost all of my books and stories, though, I called Finney-esque time travel. And it's actually the most accurate, the most realistic, and the most likely. And that is using a method which is seems to be purely mental. But according to Einstein, it was the most likely. Einstein's theory, and I'm going to simplify this, was that history and the future are not things that have passed away or that have not happened yet, but everything is like we talk about in scripture is kind of an eternal now, that all of these things exist and still exist. The moment that just passed is still there. And you think about it like this: you're in a boat and you're traveling down a river and you pass a tree and you go around a bend in the turn. That tree is still there just because you can't see it. It has passed behind you, but it's still there. And if there was a way, if there was a method for you to turn the boat around or find another way, you could go back and revisit that tree. This view of physics is basically the idea that if you look down out from outside of time, you would basically see every timeline as perhaps a cloth or a fabric, and that each one of the strings of the fabric might be a particular timeline. And if something happened with that with that fabric, it could be bent, it could be folded. You could easily cross from one thread to another thread, except in Phineas travel, which was based on Einstein's theory. It gets a little bit deeper. I'm going to get really, really confusing to a lot of you. The mind is not the brain. The brain is the physical part. It's the fleshy part. It's the goo that sits inside your skull. The mind is what happens inside of that, and it is primarily light and electricity. And from what we know now in quantum physics and some other newly developing understandings of science, light really isn't subject to time the way that we are. And they've done experiments with light where light has been slowed down through time or sped up or jumped, or they can introduce it into a medium and it actually exits before it even entered. You could read about all these experiments. I've got a whole section on this in my book Futurity that hasn't been published yet, but I've talked about it in other books too. So the fact is that light really, and this causes some really weird things that scientists themselves called spooky elements. And so what they don't want to tell you is it throws everything out the window, because even the way that we've measured the size of the universe, or we've guesstimated the size of the universe or the size of galaxies, etc., is based on the way and the speed that we believe that light moves, even though we already know and can prove that light is not static, and that it doesn't have to move in a straight line, and it doesn't even have to pass through time. And yet we keep all these stupid, foolish ideas that somehow some explosion in space happened millions and millions of years ago, even though we've already shown that isn't necessarily true. Here's my whole point. Hello, Scott. Hello, Chuck in Middle Georgia. What's going on in your head, the thoughts, not the actual blood pumping through there and oxygen and whatnot, is light and electricity. Therefore, it's not particularly subject to time in the same way that you are. And so the idea in Finney-esque time travel is that place where you were when you were 15 and you danced around a tree with your young love is still there. It's actually still there. And if there were a way you could go visit it, and with Phineas time travel, that way is to create in the mind the circumstances that the mind cannot tell the difference between this time and that time, and can easily jump to that time. All right. So, for example, in the movie Somewhere in Time, which had Christopher Reeve in it, fantastic movie, kind of a love story. I don't know if any of you have seen it, but it's a good time travel story. He goes and visits a scientist who happens to be named Dr. Finney, after Jack Finney, the writer who came up with kind of this theory. And the guy says, listen, if you happen to be in a place that existed in that time and everything is perfect, the clothes are perfect, the buttons are perfect, every single thing has to be perfect. Everything about you. And then after everything else is perfect, it's exactly like it was in that time. Your mind has to be there too. Now, what most people don't realize, and this is where it's going to blow your mind, this is all based on Jack Finney's ideas. And Jack Finney wrote a book. He actually wrote 2 books in a series. I think one of them's called About Time, and the other one's called Time After Time, or Time and Again. This is where it's going to freak you out. His purpose in writing the book was to teach you to time travel. The book teaches you to time travel if you read the book. And he says in the book, and it's true, not everyone can do it. And just like in Somewhere in Time, in the movie Somewhere in Time, he tries it and he keeps going through all this mantras, trying to get his mind in the right place to be there. And then he finds out that the tape recorder is what's holding him back. And then I don't want to spoil it, so I'm not going to say it, but not everybody can do it, and not everybody can do it every time. Everything has to be perfect, and then the mind has to be aligned with it as well. So, for example, some people can't do it. In the book that I'm talking about that teaches you this, he says not everybody can do it. It takes a certain type of mind. But what he's doing, and it's a little bit subterfugish, as he takes you through the book, there's increasing detail about locations and where you are. So when the character goes back to like 1912 or 1890, everything is described. He describes the lintels on the doors. He describes the floor plans. He describes the carpet. He describes the clothing. And if you go read the reviews on Amazon, people are like, this sucks. There's too much detail. Too much detail. The guy's explaining everything. It's bad writing. See, they didn't get it. He was actually teaching you about the details, because the details are how you time travel. The details have to be perfect, and you have to be able to get your mind into the story. So that's the way it works in Finney Time Travel, and I use this method in quite a few of my books and stories. All right, so that said, when you read classic literature, the biggest complaint is, I'm going to talk about War and Peace because Hava brought it up. War and Peace is rightly called the greatest novel ever written. And yet, something like 99.9% of the people who try to read it cannot read it, never get through it, and hate it. Because they don't get it. They don't get what Tolstoy was doing. It's called War and Peace for a reason. Because it shows the same places in two different times. And the great amount of detail, the high number of characters, what they're wearing, the details of their clothing, the details of the carpeting, the details of war, all of these things are there for a reason. Because if you're one of the people who can read that and actually lose yourself visually in your head and get into the details, you can time travel. That's what time travel is. There's no difference. You can't live in a world where a bunch of whacknuts say that we're living in a simulation, and then at the same time say simulations aren't real. If they say that this is a simulation, they're saying it's all taking place in your mind. It's all taking place in a computer or in a hard drive or something, and you're just experiencing it through some type of medium. That's exactly what reading a book is. If you're really dumb, you can't read a book. And the better the book is, the more dumb people can't read it. So time travel and literature literally go hand in hand. Now, some people think I'm speaking metaphorically, or I'm speaking figuratively or something. I'm not. People who love to read and who love to read specific types of books are time travelers. Now, they may not have the capacity to actually travel. Maybe there's that one step like there is in Somewhere in Time where somebody can't jump. They can't make the jump. At the same time, they may enjoy that book 1,000 times better than anybody else. Here's the deal with War and Peace, and then we're going to talk about Anna Karenina. We're going to talk about some American literature. We're going to talk about Thomas Hardy, the writer, not the actor. War and Peace is very detailed. The first 500 pages. All right, sorry your internet crashed, Hannah. The first 350, 400 pages is people going to parties, tea parties, going to name day parties, people going, and it's the social life of St. Petersburg and Moscow. All of those characters are important. You have to learn them and learn who they are. And so, as you read those things, if you are able to do it, if you're one of the few, and I think the people in my audience are the kind of people who can time travel. If you pay attention, if you use your mind to see the detail, the light and the electricity in your brain starts to line up with that period. It happened to be written in that period so that it's accurate. There's no difference. You're capable of mentally traveling. And so you go and you get into that. The whole first part of the book is not only describing what life was like before Napoleon's invasion. Meanwhile, over here, Napoleon is on his way. The whole book, he's on his way. Most people don't know history, or else there would be some tension and there would be some excitement, because Napoleon's going to come and he's going to get all the way to Moscow and he's going to burn Moscow. That's not a spoiler. That happened in history. So if you know that, you're reading it, you're like, oh my gosh, all these people are having parties and they're dressing up and they're going to people's houses and they're having tea and all these kind of things. And Napoleon's coming. So the second half of the book, the second part of the book, is the war part. And it's the same locations, the same people, the same families and all this kind of stuff. Only the war is going on. It's fantastic. It could not be changed and be any better. Anna Karenina, also by Tolstoy, similar. Probably, in my mind, a better novel, more enjoyable novel. But I'm not going to quibble. 1 and 2, 2 and 1. Anna Karenina. People think the book is about Anna Karenina, and it's not. I have a video on this channel. All you have to do is type in Michael Bunker and Anna Karenina, and it'll come up, and it's how to read Anna Karenina. I won't go through all that right now. If you haven't read Tolstoy or you're new to Russian literature, read Anna Karenina first. Don't start with War and Peace. But all you have to do when you get into these books, or you get into Fathers and Sons by Turgenev, or you get into And Quietly Flows the Dawn by Michael Sholikov, is tell yourself that stupid people can't make it through the book. That it takes a special kind of person, a special kind of mind, a critical thinking mind, the kind of mind that can analyze things, that can see things and can visualize things, and that can make their way through the morass that we're in today. That's the thing. So reading literature is important. Let me tell you why. And I mention this all the time. Because if you don't know what's going to happen, you live your life in trepidation. You either are so stupid you don't worry, or you are afraid and you do worry. What we need is people that can say, yep, saw that coming a mile away. Why, this is right out of this book. I mentioned Michael Sholikov in his book, And Quietly Flows the Dawn. Highly recommended. In that book, it's basically about a village in the Don River area. The Cossacks. And it's all the people that live in this village. And the first part of the book is what their lives are like. Nobody writes books like this anymore because you can't get them published and people won't read them because they're too dumb. You have to start a book today saying, Billy went out to the mailbox thinking it was like every other day, and his house exploded and everybody died. That has to be how hello, Barb. That's how books have to. You have to catch them in the first couple of sentences. And I know this. That's why a lot of people haven't read Wick, which is a Russian-style classic novel. But back then, they wanted to embrace or immerse you in a region, or immerse you in a culture, or immerse you in these characters, to know their lives, to know what it's like. Today, you can't learn anything about people's lives by reading books, because none of that's in the book. In a Russian novel, you find out that the way, when they say that he was sitting on the stove while his wife was cooking, well, that sounds weird. He would get burned. Except they had these big cement and wood rocket stoves that have large areas like sofas and stuff you could sit on, because it warms them up, and they live in Russia and it's cold. You can find out a lot about their lives, about what they eat, how they hunt. If you ever watched Downton Abbey, first couple of seasons, if you ever sit back, I don't know if you've ever thought about this stuff, but they're on this farm. It's a farm. It has a castle on it, but it's a farm out in the middle of the countryside. It's not in London. And in the first couple episodes, they go out and they're, during a certain time of the year, they're making jam. They're bringing in greens. Later on in the season, they're buying everything at the store in the seasons. But early on, it's operating much like those places operated at the time, and for hundreds and thousands of years before that, all over the world. There were times of the seasons where you had to make food, and you had to can food, and you made jam, and you had pigs, and you salted the pork, and you did all that kind of stuff. You learn that stuff in books. You can read what their lives were like, and then you have, every time you do that, your character, your nature, your intelligence deepens. It gets deeper. You're not the person that's sitting there in front of Fox or CNN going, duh, they just said this, and you just automatically believe it. Because you have a little bit of texture, a little bit of depth. You understand a little bit of what the world is like. The reason that a bunch of dummies want to destroy civilization is because they don't know what it took to make it. They have no clue what it took to build. They look at a bridge, and it's just as natural as a weed growing in a bar ditch. Hello, James. Good to see you. You're going to like this one. If you guys are here live, it says live up here, and then congratulations. If you're one of the future people, which means you're not watching this till later, or if you're somebody that came in the middle, you want to go back and watch the beginning of this. But if you're one of the dumb ones, you're sitting there watching, they tell you something, you don't know any better. You go out and you see a big building, or you see a store, or you see food at a farmer's market. You have no clue what it took, not just to do those particular things, but to create a civilization where you don't die just going across the street, across the road, or a street is something that's part of civilization. They are going to destroy civilization because they have no idea what it took for thousands of years to build it, so that even the poor, even people of all races and ethnicities and everything else, can live better than rich people did 1,000 years ago. You just think about it. They're going to destroy it because they don't, and you know why? Because they don't read books. Nobody taught them anything. We all sat there in school, and we had even our own peers, our own teachers and everything telling us, well, this book's kind of boring. We're going to give you this other book that's, and they give you dumber and dumber and dumber books. And somebody says, well, I can't read War and Peace. It's too boring. There is no such thing. If you're boring, it's because you're stupid. If you're bored, it's because you're stupid. Yeah, if you're watching live and you don't see live, it just means you probably passed away. It should say live up here somewhere. But if it doesn't, right now it's 7:29 on a Monday. You get what I'm saying? So I want to tie all this back together. You can time travel, because I believe if you're watching this show, even if you're a future person, you're not an idiot. And you can pick out a book today, as soon as this show's over. You can pick out a classic book like The Mayor of Casterbridge, or you could pick out a classic book like, anything by Mark Twain. Pick out a Russian novel. No Dostoevsky at the beginning. You need an entry-level drug. Get yourself a James Fenimore Cooper, who Mark Twain hated. So here's the thing. You can, while you're reading it, stop. Stop yourself. Have yourself a pad of paper and look at it and tell yourself this. Am I immersed in this period? If I'm reading Tom Sawyer, am I immersed in it so that I can see it? When they describe something, I can see it. And the more you get immersed in it, the more you make yourself get into that period, the more you're going to learn. Because here's the thing that's hidden in books. I tell people all the time, the news will lie to you. The Republicans will lie to you. The Democrats will lie to you. The moderates will lie to you. The president will lie to you. The Congress will lie to you. Everybody's lying to you. Movies are lying to you. The radio's lying to you. Let me tell you that one time they don't lie. For example, I have used this example before. I'm watching a movie with Cary Grant. Cary Grant escapes from jail or something. I can't remember what it was. Probably the 1930s, late 1930s, early 1940s. And he finds himself, he like breaks into this house where this woman is there. She just happens to have the next Supreme Court justice who's becoming the Supreme Court justice. Imagine that. At her house. Cary Grant breaks in. He gets knocked out cold. And she goes into the kitchen and she pumps water like this with a water pump like I have up at the cottage. That's what we do. That's how we get our water. We pump it like this. And it comes out of a pitcher pump, and she gets it on a rag, and she goes and puts it on his head. Here's all the things they could lie about. They could lie about the Supreme Court justice. They can lie about him breaking out of jail. It's Cary Grant. He's an actor, so it's all lying. Here's what they aren't lying about. That pitcher pump. Because if they had put a pitcher pump in that movie for that time period, and nobody had used a pitcher pump for 50 years, everybody in the movie, watching the movie, would have stopped and gone, what the hell? It's almost like if you were watching a modern sci-fi novel, or excuse me, a modern sci-fi movie, perhaps something really, really futuristic, and they got hovering cars and they got floating robots and everything. And the main character goes over there and picks up a phone, and there's a curly cord on it. And he dials. And they don't explain it. Everybody would get, their minds would come out of the story. So you know when she's pumping that water like that, that's not a mind screw. That's something that everybody watching it at the time went, yep. That's how you get water. That's one way. They probably had faucets with pressure, but not everywhere did. So as you read books, notice things. When you're watching what's his name? Made all like the Birds, and he made all the horror film, early horror films. The one, the Psycho, made the Psycho. When you're watching his movies and somebody gets on a streetcar, pay attention. They're not lying about that, how you get on a streetcar, how you pay for it, what the seats look like, what the railings look like. If they're in Europe, if you're watching the Third Man, Hitchcock, that's right. And they're running around under Vienna in the catacombs down there. They're not lying about that part. All the rest of it could be lies. They could be lying about the Nazis. They could be lying about all kinds of stuff, but they're not lying about the fact that there's these catacombs underneath Vienna that look better than most of the world today. Those are the details. Grasp hold of them. They're the threads that tie us to all of time. Your mind is made out of light and electricity, not your brain, your mind. That light and that electricity is not subject to time in the same way that you are. The better you get at that, the more you can begin to understand the reality of whatever you're in, a simulation or God's creation as I see it. And the more you know about God's creation, the more you know about what's happened. And then I can take that and I can go read the scriptures. I go, yep, this is what that is. This is what that is. Boy, this sure makes a lot more sense now. This is learning to read. Learning to read 101. All right, if anybody has any questions or comments, that seems a little weird. That was a little bit of a weird rant for today. You can time travel if you're not dumb or if you have the right mental makeup to be able to do it. People think they can't do it, but you can do it. And I said some people are limited as to how far they can get immersed, how far they can travel, whether they can travel, but some people are. If you got the right makeup, if you practice and practice, no, not remote viewing. Your spirit doesn't fly anywhere. I'm talking about actual time travel. It's possible. I've just explained it all. All right. So if you guys have any questions or comments, go ahead and remote viewing. They go to places they haven't ever been before. They haven't even read about. Someone just tells them, hey, we want you to go to the Pentagon. I don't believe in that. I believe that's mumbo jumbo. Of course, everybody thinks what I just said probably was mumbo jumbo. But if you've ever read a book, here's the thing. Ask yourself this. Have you ever read a book and you got so into it, the world around you disappeared? Disappeared. You were in it. Happened to me very young. Very young. But then I learned the trick. The trick is to find the details and inhabit them. Embrace them. Actually begin to study them. And if you do that, you learn how to read. And then you learn history. Then you learn what things were. And people can't fool you. They can't trick you. They can't convince you that destroying somebody else's property, just burning down a village, burning down the whole entire civilization is a good idea. They can't, because you'll know what it took. When we dive deep into God's word, we can travel and gain knowledge and wisdom. Absolutely. It's all there. Last Pilgrims. That's right, Mike. All right, if anybody's got questions or comments, I'm here for you. Won't be here much longer. I don't mean anything esoteric like I'm time traveling tonight, but I do, and I do it regularly. Daniel says, got November 1960 in the mail today. Put it in line after Gulag and Storm. Good, good. That's a fantastic book. Reading November 1916 in concert with War and Peace is fantastic, because some of the stuff overlaps. Some of the stuff that happened at the time of Napoleon, it's the same towns and the same villages, but it's only 100 years later. All right, any more comments and questions? I got me some fruit punch, and the reason I have fruit punch is because I have to drink a lot of water. I'm drinking 2 gallons of water a day right now. I don't want to get into why, but I will at some point. And this is just some of that powder I put in there that makes it go down better. I know people think this is probably some kind of booze or some kind of mushrooms because of my rant. Tell me what you thought about my rant. Do you believe me? I tell people all the time I'm a time traveler, but they don't believe me. They ought to. All right, I'm not seeing any questions pop up. Maybe they're just really delayed, so I'm going to give it another minute In the meantime, let me tell you, my mouse freezes. Let me tell you that we, as always, appreciate your help. If you can go to michaelbunker.com/fundraiser, see if I can find it here. And you can sign up, as some of you have, to do a monthly stipend, a monthly patronage, a monthly donation, so that we can keep doing the show. Today, as we speak, I got my check for YouTube. And at the same time, at the same day, I got all the charges for this channel, for my web hosting, for some other stuff that I do for the show. So that's what's going on. If you want to go to michaelbunker.com/fundraiser, you can do a monthly deal, or you can do a one-time donation or whatever. I always appreciate you guys. Appreciate you guys watching the show. Make sure you subscribe. Go to YouTube after this show's over, when it's not still live, and hit the like button, subscribe, and then go down in the comments section. Everything you've typed heretofore while the show is live doesn't count. You have to go after the show's over, today, tomorrow, the next day, put a comment, say, I love the show. I think you're full of it. Perhaps you time travel. Maybe you're for real. Maybe you didn't. Either way, every time you put a comment and you like the video, then YouTube's like, hey, people like this guy. We need to let more people see it. So like 52% of the people who watched the last couple of videos got there because YouTube recommended the video to them. And that's all because of you guys. So as always, we appreciate it. All right, Russ, I appreciate you believing me. Thank you, Scott. Thank you all. As always, I've appreciated being here for you, and I appreciate you being here for me. And as always, God bless. I love you. Lord willing, I'll see you again, maybe tomorrow, maybe the next day, but soon enough, and I will see you when I see you.